Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of my favorite ships and what I think about some of the other ships and a few problems that I have with a couple of, shipping trends pertaining mainly to the Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys series. Since, just my shipping opinions on some of these. Major thing is I like Franky and Nancy together. I did used to like Ned and Nancy for the longest time, keeping everyone in their universe, so Frank and Callie, Joe and Iola, all this. And then I heard about crossovers and started crossing over characters, and it was just like a whole new world opened up for me. Don't start singing the song. We're Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys. Don't go headed into Disney. So after that, and then I'm coming back to the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys fandom, finding out there was a Frank and Nancy thing, and then watching the 70s series, and then rereading the books. It's like I fell for Frank and Nancy, and I fell hard. I ain't going back. Love you, Ned, but I just don't think he's the one for Nancy, anymore. I mean, growing up, if you reread the books, there is, like, a distinct similarity between the descriptions for Frank and Ned. Both have brown hair, both have brown eyes, both are 6 feet tall. No, seriously, they are both 6 feet tall. And, they're both great athletes. They're smart. And, yes, and they're handsome too. They're pretty. But, the general descriptions of both of these boys, you're just like, well, men at this, technically, since Ned is in college and Frank is technically 18 in the rewrites. Even though, he still got 1 year of school left. But, yeah, I noticed that growing up, and it's just like, Frank and Ned sound very similar. So I noticed that growing up, and, now that I've heard about the crossovers and fanfiction and all that, I've been writing it in my head for the longest time. Now getting it out into paper, and to, websites, Archive of Our Own, fanfiction, Wattpad, or Mandeville's my pen name, just to say, if you're interested in checking them out. But yeah, it's been interesting to see how, especially in rereading these books and then reading the Super Mysteries for the first time. I had only stuck to the original 56 in both. But, rereading them is just like, yeah, I see Nancy and Frank getting along, or, actually becoming a couple. In comparison to Nancy and Ned, or Frank and Callie. Especially Frank and Callie, since they practically write her out of the later books. Same thing with Iola, even though she tries to last around, and it's like, they had to kill her off, and she still stayed around. Spoilers, sorry for anyone who didn't know that about later stories in the Hardy Boys. Yeah, they try to kill her off, and she still stays around. She's, these girls are tough. You can't kill them off at the beginning. Then again, that is Chet Martin's little sister. Please don't kill her off. Sure, she doesn't have as big a part as her big brother, but she's still pretty, pretty important. And I think the reason why they wrote out Callie and Iola was so that Frank and Joe could have their, weekly crush in honor of the 70s show. Because they did that. Joe, though Iola wasn't present in the 70s show, And so Joe would, meet girls and go out with, um, you know, if there was another woman in the episode, if there was, it typically was a duo, and so that Frank would go out with one and Joe would go out with the other. There's only been, like, I think a couple of times where it was if Frank, and Callie were doing something, and then Joe had someone to go out with. But yeah, it started to become this thing where they'd have the weekly crush. Well, on Nancy's side, they tried to do that, and then went straight back to Ned. Whereas Bert and Dave and Buck originally, I kid you not, Buck was an original character, Ned's best friend, who went out with George Fane. Technically, she's had more studies than Bess. And Bess is the boy crazy one. No CW, stop changing that. So, those guys got written out. And so Bess primarily gets the boyfriend of the week, typically who becomes the bad guy in a lot of cases, apparently. And George gets a couple every now and then. But she's, everyone's like, oh, she comes off as lesbian. It's like, why is lesbian the first thing that comes to mind if George doesn't even seem to show any interest in women? Everyone's like, oh, these closeted lesbians is like, what do they call it? Closeted asexuals and aromantics. Yeah, my other thing is, like, Bess is girly girl and boy crazy, and they change her for the CW show, which drives me nuts, because, she had that character, little, that was her thing, okay, that was her thing in the book. She still had other characteristics, but that was her, like, defining feature in the books. It wasn't Bess unless she was boy crazy kind of thing. George is a tomboy, and my biggest pet peeve with this is turning every tomboy into a lesbian. When George has shown that she is in fact interested in boys, and so, it's, how do I want to put this? Being a tomboy does not automatically mean you have male, that you think. No, because that's not the way I want to put it. That you think like a boy, I guess is one way of putting it. But, with all these attempts to take down all these gender roles, it seems like they're just simply reinforcing them. Okay? Because, like, George can't be a tomboy and be interested in boys at the same time. Type of the thing. There's this box that they've put tomboys in now, and it's driving me up the wall, because I've got two sisters. One who is very tomboyish, but she's got, she's let her hair grow out, and she's okay with skirts, and she's, she's had crushes on guys, okay? But she's very tomboyish. And I've got friends who are the exact same way, girls who've grown up on ranches. They're tomboys. They have no problem getting their hands dirty, but they like a pretty dress. So it's very misogynistic, I guess you can say, to limit women to these certain boxes. And yeah, I'm probably getting a little upset, too upset over this, but it is an upsetting factor that, you've got two sides of the spectrum, and it's like, there's no, everyone wants to say there's a spectrum when it comes to love, but not when it comes to personalities. Okay? Or anything else in a person. It's like you can't be this and like this. Like you can't be goth and like unicorns. Which is like, unicorns are technically gothic to begin with? It's only modern day associations with the unicorn that make them seem kid-friendly. Okay, that horror did some damage. You ever seen a narwhal in action? I don't want to be on the other end of that horn, okay? I don't think you would either. I'm just saying, it's pretty sharp. Unicorns were considered feisty, okay? They're pretty gothic. Just saying. Hashtag let's bring that back. Hashtag gothic unicorns. They can still be white and, be gothic. Anyways. But, there's this whole thing going on with George, and it irritates me to a great extent. Okay, I had that word on the tip of my tongue and now I can't say it for some reason. But it just annoys me. That the first thing is like, oh, she's not really interested in, boys, therefore she must be interested in girls. You keep saying there's a spectrum, but you cut off half of it. You're not doing a very good job of representing everybody. Just saying. And for someone who's already in canon, shown that she's interested in boys, not just in the revised version, but also in the original. She was interested in boys. She went out with Buck Rodman. Okay, that was her boyfriend. That's what I mean by she's literally had more beaux than Bess. Or at least steady beaux. Long time beaux. Bess has only had one. George had two. And Nancy, yes, is technically pretty much had one, but there's mention that she's, had a couple of others. So. And, there was Dawn before Ned, and I think there was another one. It's been a while. I'll have to read it, but there's also some talk about one in the original as well, which, again, I'll have to reread. So, anyways, to kind of get that off my chest, I'm sorry about the rambling. I'm trying to get my thoughts processed here. To find the right words to say is, I'm not against, well, I don't like reading some of this representation. I'm not against it. I just don't like reading it. It's not my thing. So I kind of do gravitate towards the straight ships. That's my shipping preference, okay? So, I don't mind having asexuals and aromantics in a story, because again, I kind of grew up with some of those. But, just, it's an annoying pet peeve of mine, to say the least. To say that, oh, you don't like boys, therefore you must like girls. It's like, you're not even letting the person tell you what their preference is if, they might not be interested in anybody, which is like also perfectly fine. Hello? It's more than just straight or gays. Don't tell me there's this whole spectrum and not include anyone else. And like I said, this is also because George is a great character. I love all the Nancy Drew characters. Well, I shouldn't say love. More like really, really like all the Nancy Drew characters and all the Hardy Boys characters. and I grew up with them. They're old friends of mine. And, rereading them, it's like, oh yes, I remember this about this character, I remember that about this character. Or I'd be like, oh, I thought I knew this character, apparently I didn't. So, that being said, finally having gotten that off my chest, probably a lot less eloquent than I would have liked, but it's over, it's done with. I ship George Fame with Chet Martin. Okay, everyone's like, oh, maybe she needs to be with a girl. What if she just needs to be with someone who's not what we would consider a typical man? Okay, think about Chet. He's technically the mother hen of the group for the Hardy Boys. He's making sure they sit down and eat. He's always talking about food. He's got different hobbies. He seems to have an allergy to work. He doesn't really like working. I mean, but he also seems to be one of those characters I think would be great with kids, too. And so it's a perfect combination. George would be a career woman, and Chet would be the stay-at-home dad. The greatest combo I can think of, because with, like, Bert, I would assume he'd be like, oh yeah, she could stay at home, But considering how George's character has grown, and in the later years, yeah, this would seem more of her thing. She's very tomboyish. She likes going out on hikes. I mean, it's not that Chet doesn't like going out on hikes. He does. He enjoys learning about different things in nature. He'd be totally a great homeschooler. Okay? He'd be great at homeschooling. I'm just saying. He would, just a great teacher. But he doesn't want, see, here's the thing. This is why I think he'd be a great homeschooler, is because he would like to teach his own kids, because I think a larger classroom might be a little too much for him. That, and like I said, he would see it as work instead of being able to enjoy it. And so he teaches kids about science and all the books with the Hardys. He's, hopping from one hobby to the next. He's got a great, not exactly encyclopedia brain, but he's got a lot of knowledge in a bunch of different areas. And he's always trying out new things. So he's gonna like, oh yeah, my kid likes that. Here's a few tips in this area. My kid likes this. Here's a few tips in that area. He'd be great at this. He'd totally be great at it. So, and then George can go and work. Be a career woman, focus on athletics if she wants. So that I think I like them as a couple. The other thing with some of these ships is that not all the characters are very well developed. Callie, Iola, Bert, and Dave in particular. Okay? There's a main reason why they get written out so easily and so quickly. It's because there is not much of a character depth to them. In the original books, so far, Callie's got, some what do I want to say this? She does have some character, a little bit more so than they're in the revised, but she's still not as often present as in the revised. I guess you would say a little bit more than in the revised, but still not, you can still see the progression. It's like, okay, she gets less and less time. Same thing with Iola, and then Bert and Dave, obviously. Buck Rodman as well. And Helen, too. Helen Corning. My goodness. Once they found their niche, Nancy's group of little friends, and same thing with the Hardys, they kind of stuck with that group. And Nancy's got Ned, who actually does not get as much development as one would like, for someone who's trying to be a main character. A lot of times he's just literally the deus ex machina, and he's there to save Nancy. Or he's, drives up at the right time to take care of her or something, to help Nancy out with something. And it's like, dude, do something else, please, But, deus ex machinas are fine if done right, but up to a certain point, you're just like, give me something different, please. But anyways, personality-wise, you see, that's the other thing. General description, Frank and Ned could pass as the same person. Frank gets more time because he is a main character. He's legitimately a main character. Ned does not. But of the time we do get, he doesn't seem as interested in mystery as Frank is, obviously. But he's willing to help out Nancy, and that's in the original books. So, I mean, yeah, you could say, as people keep saying, Nancy needs Ned because he grounds her. Here's the thing. Nancy's kind of already grounded. She doesn't believe in the supernatural, and that is a grounding notion, belief in and of itself. So she doesn't, and everyone seems like, go traveling the world means you're flighty, and all this. But technically, she already is grounded. She's pretty well grounded in reality. She's got a pretty good idea. I mean, yes, in the game, she's not quite tactful with the way she asks questions, and sometimes the timing's a little off. But, it's Nancy. At least how the games have portrayed her. But, yeah, so I think she already technically is pretty well grounded. And Frank can ground her just as well as Ned can. Probably even better. Because as Frank said, he's lived with Joe. He's had to deal with Joe, who does seem more of an actual flighty person in comparison to Nancy. So, if you think of Nancy just traveling around means she's not grounded, then yeah, maybe Ned having this in the same place would be fine. But here's the thing, in the books he was going everywhere. And see, this is where the whole Ned's kind of similar to Frank thing comes in, because it's like, in the books, seriously, they were pretty similar. And a lot of personality traits, at least. I guess you can just simply say Ned is not as smart as Frank, or at least not as detective, brain-oriented, I guess you can say. But yes. And, see, I'm sorry, I'm rambling now. So Nancy and Frank, George and Chet, and Bess and Joe. The flatty duo. Everybody like, opposites attract, but here's the thing, similarities keep you together. Bess and Joe's similarities, they like flirting with people. So they're going to be the, number one most romantic couple of the year. Because they're gonna be like, oh yeah, we love each other so much, gonna be flirting with each all the time. Every day's gonna be like a honeymoon even after the honeymoon phase. So, you know, they definitely have that in common. As for what they don't, I mean, Joe is the one who rushes into things without properly thinking them through. Bess is more cautious. I mean, probably a lot more cautious than Frank, which I think these two are kind of on the extreme level in their cases. Sort of. Again, they're probably a little bit more closer to the middle, whereas Bess, obviously is more cautious, but she will go in with her friends, kind of a lot like Chet. And and yeah, that's where, Chet and George comes in, because George will follow Nancy anywhere, doesn't seem to be afraid of anything, while Chet does seem to be afraid of a lot of things, but it's definitely just more of a cautious person. He wants it to be alright, which is why I say he's like the mother hen. He's keeping them, safe and fed and all that. I mean, seriously, in the secret panel, he's the one with the food that feeds them, for at least for a little while. But yeah, those are my major ones. I do have all the secondary characters. But this is also, again, pertaining to my fanfiction. I like Helen and Tony together. I know, taking a character that's already, getting married in the books, making her younger and splitting her out. But I like Tony and Helen. I like Emily and Slim Robinson. Slim Robinson was the friend of the Hardys, who they helped out in the Tower Treasure. Really sweet guy. Then I am redoing the Topham twins. They're not total jerks. In my series, we have Ida and Isabel. Isabel is more music oriented, but she is the type of person who can't wait for an adventure either. She likes music. She's mainly into dancing. She likes herself a good adventure. Whereas, I'm sorry, that Papa's me. Whereas Ida, no wait, did I say Isabel was the one who's in the music? And that was supposed to be Ida. Isabel, whose nickname is Izzy, is more into sports, and she's the one who's, kind of cautious and always likes to come prepared. I mean, seriously, she likes to come prepared for everything. She is almost like the mama hen of this group, of the Nancy's group. And I have Izzy with Beth, and Ida is with Peach Jones. I don't know if you... Okay. History time. In the 1970s, there was a TV show called The Hardy Boys. And it was in the same style as the Archie cartoons. And when the main characters all play instruments, have a band, Sawanda and Pete Jones come from the 1970s show of the Hardy Boys. And Pete is into music, and I have him with Ida. And then more characters will come, and more ships will come, and who I think works well with whom. So, and I base my ships on what I've seen from real life relationships, and people and how they've interacted. So a lot of them I might seem a little bit biased simply because, like, oh, I actually know a couple like this in real life. Of course they're gonna work out together. You know, kind of a thing. Other ones I'm like, you don't seem to fit with anyone, so you'll stay single for now. You might stay single forever. I don't know. But I do like pairing up people. I find it kind of fun, but it's also, gives me as a writer a chance to work with characters and to give me a better understanding of character development, character, planning, relationships, and all that. So, but yes, those are my takes on the shipping and some of my issues with some of the trends and the Nancy Drew shipping game. Oh, shipping game. It feels like it is a shipping game, but yeah. So, anyways, thank you if you stayed around this long and understood just an inkling of what I was talking about. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I understand I'm not the most eloquent and I'm just not the greatest at forming words right now, so thank you for understanding everything. If you do have any questions or need some clarifications, go ahead and, comment below, and I'll answer it to the best of my abilities. Just because I'm typing doesn't mean the words come any better. Though it might give me a little bit more time to find the words that I'm looking for and, be sure that I know how to spell them properly. Because I'm like that. English major, what can I say? Anyways. So thank you again for coming to my video. Thanks for listening to the rambling. I hope you understood it. Most of it, anyways. And happy reading, and have a lovely, blessed day. Bye!